Hello beautiful people, I'm Uncle Fidget. Completing Pokemon Heart Gold with only a Feraligatr using nothing but HM moves wore me down, so I need to take a break from the HM only runs for a bit. After searching for an idea for a new challenge, I came across this video by Mah-Dry-Bread, who managed to beat Pokemon Gold with only a Pikachu, and I thought to myself, can it be done with just a Pichu? Not long after, a subscriber actually requested this exact run, so now it had to be done. As a baby Pokemon, Pichu's stats are unsurprisingly poor, with the base stat total adding up to a pitiful 205, and most of that is in its speed, so we're going to have a pretty rough time of this one I reckon. Its level up move pool is also seriously lacking, with its strongest electric move that it learns being Thundershock, not even Thunderbolt. Looks like I'll have to resort to TMs and some underhanded tactics to beat this game. Just like my previous runs, I'll only be allowed to use Pichu in battle, but this time I'll actually be allowed to have other Pokemon for HMs. I can't use items in battle, but held items and items outside of battle are fine. Before we get going, don't forget to leave a comment predicting how high of a level I'll have to beat Red. I used the Universal Randomizer to replace Totodile with Pichu. That way our rival starter will be resistant to our electric moves. I named my Pichu Major Lee, after the YouTuber whose Silver Nuzlocke kept me entertained during this run. Here's their stats just in case you were interested. I decided to do some leveling before taking on our rival, seeing as our only attacking move would be resisted, and Lee is only a baby after all. Lucky for us though, our first attack manages to paralyze Chikorita, so between that and our berry, we're able to whittle him down until we win. I name our rival Geo Jr. as always, because I like reminding him of his father and how he abandoned him. I then rush straight to Falkner, as he'll actually be easier than the Bellsprout Tower. Pidgey falls in one Thundershock, and although Pidgeotto lands a critical super effective Mud Slap, Lee is able to finish them off without much of a struggle. We get the TM for Mud Slap for our troubles, which we'll need if we were to stand any chance of getting through Rock Tunnel. Once in Azalea Town, I embarrass Team Rocket by beating them up with a baby, and then try to take on Bugsy. But Scyther's Fury Cutter keeps taking us down just before we can land the finishing blow, so I have to get a few extra levels under my belt before coming back with enough power to put him in his place. And yes, Bugsy is a boy. I don't see how people get confused about this. There's no way a female could rock short shorts like those and pull them off. Next up is another fight with our rival, who's already evolved his starter, so it's far from easy. We get a great first hit on Ghastly and manage to paralyze him, but that doesn't seem to affect anything as he gets his attack off before falling next turn. I use Thunder Wave to ensure paralysis on Bayleaf before repeatedly hitting it with Mud Slap in order to lower its accuracy. I told you we'd have to fight dirty if we wanted to win. After his accuracy won't go any lower, I switch to Thundershock, and just have to hope that he either gets paralyzed or keeps missing us until we can take it out. Which is exactly what happens. Last out is Zubat, who hangs on from a Thundershock, but as his bite does incredibly little, we're able to claim victory. On the way through Eterna Forest, I grab the TM for Headbutt and replace Charm with it. Then it's time for the infamous cowgirl herself, Whitney. I knew going in I'd have to be leveled up before I stood a chance, so I wandered in at just under level 30. Headbutt does around half damage to Clefairy, but then out of all the moves Metronome could roll up, she hits Magnitude. I'm sure we're done for, but luckily it's only Magnitude 5, so it does very little damage, allowing us to finish her off. I start with a Thunder Wave on Miltank to try and help stop her rollout, but she lands a crit regardless. I then switch to Mud Slap to lower her accuracy. She lands another rollout, leaving Lee on just 8 HP, but that's all Miltank had left in it. From here on, she continues to either miss or be fully paralyzed, so we're able to slowly beat her down. Once Whitney stops crying about it, we gain our badge and can move on to Mahogany Town. There we have to take on Geo Jr. once more inside the Burnt Tower. A few Thundershocks manage to take out Haunter, and we only take a lick. Magnemite is quad weak to Mud Slap, but due to it only having 20 power, it takes 2 hits to take it out. Due to it lowering Magnemite's accuracy though, we manage to avoid their Supersonic. On to Bayleaf. We start with Thunder Wave to paralyze him, but take a Poison Powder, so we're on the clock. Amazingly though, Bayleaf gets fully paralyzed twice, and then we get a flinch, so the poison damage is all we actually take before it goes down. Zubat just hangs on from a Thundershock, but once again we avoid the Supersonic, so we take it out next turn. With Junior beaten, the ground opens up to swallow us whole, and we get the best response from our rival ever. "What are you doing falling into a hole? Some genius you are!" I love this guy. Morty is a bit much to take on right now, so I have to go and level up on the Kimono Girls as they're a much easier fight. Once I'm done wiping the floor with them, I'm finally ready to tackle the Ghost Gym. Ghastly goes down in 2 Thundershocks and doesn't use Curse, which would just end the attempt right there. Haunter will need 3 Thunder Shocks to knock out, and we manage to avoid the effects of Hypnosis, so move on to Gengar. I swap to my Thunder Wave Mudslap strat, and manage to end him without him ever landing a hit. Morty's final Haunter gets us into yellow health with a Nightshade, but then decides to use Mean Look, so we claim victory. Next up is Chuck. His Primeape, as always, offers no threat, only using Leer before fainting. His Poliwrath, despite being weak to Electric, still takes more damage from Headbutt due to the move's difference in power. So I start by paralysing him, and then proceed to run headlong into him repeatedly until I knock him out. And once again, thanks to a combination of paralysis and flinching, we never take a hit in return. Jasmine is a right pain. Although Mudslap is technically super effective against her entire team, the damage output just isn't enough to break her defenses. So after a number of attempts, I decide to give up and go to Blackthorn City instead, to deal with Team Rocket, who are still a joke even in the face of a Pichu. After I've thwarted their plans, I can go to beat up Pryce. His Seal takes 2 hits to take out, but I doubt our speed being lowered from Icy Wind will really make that much of a difference. Piloswine doesn't even carry a ground move, so offers us no real threat as even his Fury attack misses, and we manage to finish him off with a few headbutts, and get Pryce to waste his Hyper Potion. Last out is Dewgong, so I start by paralysing him before switching to Thundershock. Despite him not getting paralysed once, we just manage to hang on from his barrage of Aurora Beams to take the win. Now I have to go back to fight Jasmine before I can continue. After a few more failed attempts, however, I know I'm going to have to go full cheese to stand any chance in this fight. I replaced Thundershock with Swagger, as its damage output was getting a bit too low for the fights anyway, and swap Headbutt for Return, which I grabbed from the Goldenrod department store on a Sunday, and it should have 102 base power now, seeing as Pichu keeps trying to evolve after every battle. And finally, I switched Thunderwave for Attract. With this incredibly cheap moveset, I managed to put down both her Magnemites in a couple of Mudslaps each, avoiding the first one supersonic, but her second one manages to paralyze us. This actually means Steelix will outspeed us, and if we get fully paralyzed too many times, we might be in trouble. As if to prove this point, we get nailed by an Iron Tail and can't move on the first turn. So we get slammed by another one, taking us down to only 19 HP before we can get our Attract off. Now that Steelix is infatuated though, we can start being an adorable pain in the rear. I use Swagger to boost his attack and confuse him, so that should he hit himself, it will do a lot more damage. It's not like we'd survive another hit anyway. After that, I swap to Mudslap to lower his accuracy, so that if he were to break through Infatuation and Confusion, we can at least hope he misses. Once his accuracy is fully lowered, Jasmine Hyper Potions, so it's just a matter of slapping him about with Return and keeping him confused with Swagger until I can finally take down this 900-pound behemoth. Of course, I can't possibly continue without a stab move, so after spending a whole bunch of money in the game corner, I buy the TM for Thunder, and proceed to finish off Team Rocket in the Radio Tower, who, thanks to our newly acquired move, are easily dealt with. Down in the underground, Junior wants a rematch, and honestly the movesets of his Pokemon are just as annoying as Lee's. In this attempt though, Golbat falls to 1 Thunder, and although Magnemite takes a couple of returns, it doesn't manage to land a Thunder Wave. Haunter goes down in 1 Thunder, and Sneasel only manages to get in 2 weak quick attacks before we finish him off. Last out is his starter, who's fully evolved now, so I have to start out with an Attract and hope for the best. Despite this, we get rocked by a Body Slam, so I go for Swagger to make it less likely that we'll take another one. Thanks to that, he hits himself twice, allowing us to end the battle. We can then finish off Team Rocket for good, thoroughly embarrassing them, so that they won't even dream of coming back again. That leaves only Clair standing between us and the Pokemon League. At this level, Lee can put down one of Clair's Dragonairs in 2 returns, so it's just a matter of not fainting myself before I can take them all out. Her first Dragonair goes for Thunder Wave, but it fails, so we continue without falter. The same thing happened again with her second Dragonair, and amazingly, her third one too. So it's on to Kingdra. I go for Thunder and land the hit, which does just over half her health. She goes for a Smokescreen, so not wanting to take a risk with Thunder's low accuracy, I switch to Return, which lands and manages to take her out. That was a super lucky fight. Now to just kick Junior's butt one last time, then on to the Elite Four. Sneasel is a joke and gets taken out in a single return. Magneton can be threatening, so I go for Thunder and luckily get a paralysis off. More luckily, their Thunder Wave fails, so we get to go on to Haunter, having not taken a hit. Haunter then falls in 1 Thunder, and Kadabra can't stand up to a return. As always, Meganium is our biggest worry, so we start off with Attract, but despite that, he lands a Poison Powder, so we have no time to mess around. So I hit it with a swagger, and just like before, between us hitting him with a return and him hitting himself, we managed to finish it off and then one-shot Golbat with a Thunder, managing to win the fight before the poison took its toll. Elite Four time. Will's first. We land a Thunder on Xatu, OHKOing him. Jinx goes down to one return, then it's Exeggutor, who is a real pain, so I need to use my Attract and Swagger tactic in order to cheese my way past him. Due to Thunder's accuracy, I use the same strategy against Slowbro, and I'm glad I do because of course we miss our first Thunder. Slowbro then snaps out of confusion and goes for Amnesia, so I go back to Swagger. Though I kinda wish I hadn't, as he breaks through both Confusion and Infatuation to pummel us with a powered up Body Slam. Fortunately though, we land a critical Thunder to put them down. Last out is Xatu, who also fades to one Thunder. Moving on to Koga, we land a Thunder against Ariados to one-shot them. Fortress just hangs on from a Thunder but sets up spikes, so, not really worth worrying about, and we finish it off with a return. Venomoth takes 2 returns to go down, and by the grace of Arceus, we avoid their Toxic to take them out next turn. Muck was quite funny, so I hit with Attract and he sets up an Acid Armor. But then this weird glitch happened where I used Swagger and his sprite changes to look as though he used Minimize. This happened every time I did this too, so I'm not sure what's going on. On the next turn we miss a Thunder, and he snaps out of Confusion, but just can't bring himself to attack our adorable little Pichu. So I use Swagger, and again, after missing another Thunder, I just decide to give up and switch to Return. After a few turns where either he doesn't attack or hits himself, we finally finish him off. Crobat is last out, but we finally land a Thunder to end the match. Next up is Bruno, and believe it or not, I just couldn't beat him. It seemed no matter what I did, I just couldn't cheese my way through this match. So eventually I gave up, and figured I'd have to grind up to level 100 at some point during this challenge, so why not now? I'm a little annoyed I had to resort to this, but I just wasn't seeing any other real solutions. Now that Lee has reached his final form, Bruno must cower in fear. We one-shot his Hitmontop with a return, but obviously we won't be so lucky against Onix, so I go for our Attract Swagger strat. He manages to set up a Sandstorm that chips our health away over time, but doesn't manage to get another hit in before we take him out. Hitmonlee also goes down to one return, and we move on to Hitmonchan. His Mach Punch was the reason we couldn't beat Bruno previously, but now it does very little damage, so we take him out with a return. Even Machamp must bow to the immeasurable power of our Pichu. I doubt Karen will provide us much more of a challenge, and as predicted, she really doesn't. Both Umbreon and Vileplume get OHKO'd, and even though we miss a Thunder against Gengar, and he manages to set up a Curse, due to the way the Curse mechanics work in Gen 2, and because we one-shot the rest of our team, we actually never take damage from it. On to the champion. Gyarados, with its 4 times weakness to electricity, obviously gets one-shot by Thunder. His first Dragonite manages to hold on from a return and lands a Thunder Wave. But this isn't my first rodeo, so I came prepared with a Paralyzed Cure Berry. So we finish him off before the exact same thing happens to the next Dragonite. This time though, we stay paralyzed. But fortunately he misses a Hyper Beam, so we get to move on to his last Dragonite. This one locks itself into Outrage, which really isn't doing that much damage. So we move on to Aerodactyl, still in green health. Thunder would be enough for a one-shot, but we miss. So have to take a Wing Attack and a Hyper Beam before we can face his final Pokemon, Charizard. Once again, one Thunder will be enough to win us the match. All we have to do is hold on from another Hyper Beam, which Lee does with only 25 HP remaining. So if you thought I might not have to be at level 100 to win this fight, I hope that kind of proves otherwise. Although the credits roll, we're obviously not finished just yet. So I make my way through Kanto, making fools of each of the gym leaders in turn until I reach Blue. After a number of attempts, I realise I just have no way to deal with its Rhydon, so finally replace Swagger with Iron Tail. Also, seeing as I can actually catch Pokemon for the first time in these challenges, I go ahead and grab the leftovers off of Snorlax. Pidgeot is out first and gets a quick attack in before we land a Thunder to clip his wings. Next is his terrifying Rhydon, so I decide not to mess around and go straight for the Iron Tail, which lands and leaves him with a sliver of health. I'm pretty sure he'll full restore, but he actually switches to Gyarados, who soaks up the next Iron Tail, but of course can't stand up to a Thunder. Blue then brings his Rhydon back in, so we just finish him off with a return. We then knock out Alakazam with one return, and it's on to Exeggutor. Despite his bulk, 2 returns are all we need, and he just uses Leech Seed. Arcanine also holds on from a return, and the flamethrower he comes back at us with not only does a ton of damage, it also burns us. Our attack isn't lowered enough for him to survive the next hit though, so we claim victory and press on to the game's final boss. Believe it or not, what you're about to see was only my third attempt at this fight. We show Pikachu who the true mascot should be by putting him down in a single hit. Espeon takes a return and then sets up a reflect, which is super irritating, but doesn't stop another return finishing him off. Snorlax is out, and to try and prevent him from resting, we go for Attract, getting Infatuation that turn, and then when I go for Thunder, we actually get off a Paralysis, so it's super unlikely he'll be able to attack us. He does manage to use Amnesia though, so I switch back to using Return, as even with Reflect up, it'll do more damage now. And on the next turn, when Reflect fades, we manage to take Snorlax down to the tiniest amount of health, and the thoughts of how cute we are keep him up at night, so he doesn't manage to rest, and we end him next turn. I use Attract again on Venusaur, as he's super bulky, and it really pays off as he doesn't manage to get a single attack in before we put him down. Charizard is up, and I know Thunder will be enough to beat him, but of course, we miss. We manage to hang on from our Flamethrower though, and land our Thunder next turn, which, as predicted, one-shots him. That means all that's left is Blastoise, so all we have to do is land one more Thunder to beat this game. And with that, I've beaten Pokemon Gold with only a Pichu. I know my moveset was really cheap, but if you think you can do this challenge without Attract or Swagger, I'd love to see you try. If you manage it, go ahead and drop a link in the comments, along with any other Pokemon challenge ideas you might have. I have an idea for next week's run-through that I've not seen anyone else do yet, and definitely offers up a number of challenges. So I hope you enjoyed this, and you'll join me again for that one. Until then, I'll catch you later. Be sure to subscribe, like, comment, ring the bell, do all the YouTube things, and I shall see you on the next episode.